Merciless Church of the Desert. I'm Bryna Blum, your worship associate this morning. Very pleased that Nile accepted our invitation to return today. She was last with us on November 6th, the same day as the Pride Parade, and because I received so much groaning from the congregants who missed her that day, there was no contest. I had to invite her back. So thank you, Lauren, for saying yes. Before we begin, please take a moment to silence your cell phones. Here, as we do every week, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded lands of the Agua Caliente Band of the Cahuilla people. And we commit to grow in our understanding and relationship to the land and with the people who inhabited it and nurtured it before our arrival. In this congregation where we strive to honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person, you are welcome, no matter your sexual orientation or gender identity, your age, your size, whether you're rich or poor. We welcome people of all races, religions, and cultures. We welcome you wherever you come from and whomever you love. We welcome all those who will learn and grow with us as we commit together to embrace the rich and beautiful diversity of the world. Our goal here is to build a community centered in justice, in compassion, and in love. We are glad you are with us this morning, whether you're here in the sanctuary or at home. We're very grateful for your presence. It's my cheerleader. If you'd like to learn more about us and our programming, please contact the office at admin, that's ADMIN, at uucod.org, or visit our website. And now please join us as I ring the Tibetan bowl and we listen to the wonderful Malcolm Swan play our music for centering to start our service. That music gets me every time. For opening words today, I'm going to give you Lauren's bio. Because Lauren lives her life as it befits her sermon today. She is an accomplished author, keynote speaker, retired organization development trainer, and a retired attorney. The goal of Lauren's speaking, writing, and training is to help the human species mature beyond bigotry, hatred, and violence. Her wish is for humanity to grow in understanding our profound human oneness, in the wisdom that results from that understanding, and in the compassion that arises from that wisdom. Her fervent desire is to help all of humanity to see the divine in ourselves and themselves in each other. Lauren is a force for compassion and kindness. She was born Lauren Lynn Joyson. In her late 30s, she changed her name legally with the court to Lauren Nirvana Nile. She didn't research her family's specific name, but since the majority of African Americans carry the name of their former enslavers, she just assumed that her father's name, Joyson, was the name of some French, they're from New Orleans, enslaver. In many small towns, for example, there are two families, one black, one white, with the same name. Case in point, in the small West Virginia town that her wife Barbara's former husband is from, there are white Tylers and black Tylers, and there are a lot of both. In researching it, Barbara found quite predictably that in that town, the white Tylers were the enslavers of the black Tylers. Anyway, her thought when she changed her name was, I can't do anything to change that horrible, painful history, but I don't have to carry its vestiges around with me in my identity, so I'm going to change my name. She kept her first name, but changed her middle name to Nirvana, consistent with her Eastern spiritual orientation, and her last name to Nile because it connects her to the African continent, to the Nile Valley civilization to which she's had a long intellectual connection, and to water, which she loves. Since then, the wisdom of the years have told her that before changing her name, she definitely should have researched it because she doesn't know of a single white family that has her father's name, not one. And she doesn't know of any other black families that have it either, for that matter. Hers is the only family that she knows that has the name Joyson. Well, because it is so confusing, she's decided to legally change her name again, back to her birth name, Lauren Lynn Joyson. Lauren's latest and recently published book is titled On Race and Religion, My Journey from Jim Crow to Mysticism, and it is available for purchase on Amazon. And now, if you are willing and able, please stand for our opening hymn, which Roger Beeman will lead us in. Now, if Stephen Tokaroff will come up and light the chalice, please read along with me. In the midst of challenge, May our chalice flame bear witness to the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. In the midst of uncertainty, may our chalice be a beacon of encouragement, that our values guide our choices. In these hard times, first let us look to the response of love. And now if our esteemed minister will come up to light our BioPOC candles. Again, the words are above me. We light these candles in solidarity with Black, Indigenous, and other people of color as we journey together towards spiritual wholeness. May we, as a beloved community, work to dismantle racism and all forms of oppression. May we live out our principles so that justice, dignity, and equity for all prevail. I had another reading for today, as you can see in the program. But when I received this in an email, I thought it is so UUCOD that I decided to read this instead. So I'm going rogue. Years ago, anthropologist Margaret Mead was asked by a student what she considered to be the first sign of civilization in a culture. The student expected Mead to talk about fishhooks or clay pots or grinding stones, but no. Mead said the first sign of civilization in ancient culture was a femur, thigh bone, that had been broken and then healed. Mead explained that in the animal kingdom, if you break your leg, you die. You cannot run from danger, get to the river for a drink, or hunt for food. You are meat for the prowling beasts. No animal survives a broken leg long enough for the bone to heal. A broken femur that has healed is evidence that someone has taken time to stay with the one who fell, has bound up the wound, has carried the person to safety, and has tended the person through recovery. Helping someone else through difficulty is where civilization starts, Mead said. We are our best when we serve each other. That's a lot to take in, my friends. So let's take a moment or two of quiet. Let's close our eyes, hands in our laps, take a deep breath. And I'd like to share these words. Sustenance. Sometimes it's all you need. A hand to hold, an arm to cling to, a cheek to kiss, someone to laugh with, cry with, share silence with, body to body, heart to heart, soul to soul. Someone to sustain us, a companion, someone to miss, someone who doesn't even have to say, I've got you and I get you, because you already know that, and that is priceless. You are not alone. A perfect gift bestowed upon you. And now please join with me for our hymns for meditation, Spirit of Life and Fuente de Amor.
Good morning, everyone. And I want to start off by thanking you once again for yet another invitation to speak at UUCOD. And I want to thank Bryna, who's always a wonderful, wonderful worship associate. So thank you, Bryna. I've been here at UUCOD, as my friend Jim said, quite a bit recently. I did a script-to-stage-to-screen play in January, which required 9 rehearsals and 2 performances. And then I did another one this month, so that was actually 6 rehearsals because I had to be out of town for the first week, and then 2 performances. So I got home at about 11 o'clock last night from being on this stage, and now I'm here this morning for, and it's my pleasure, of course, to deliver the message. So I don't know, seems to me like maybe I ought to think about joining UUCOD. I'm just saying. So yeah, no, I really do want to, can you hear me okay? Is this mic okay? I really do want to thank you. It's always a pleasure to be back. As I was saying when I entered the sanctuary this morning, the theology of Unitarian Universalism it just speaks to me so deeply that, yeah, it might be time for me to just make that decision. So I was asked, also, I want to apologize in advance. I've been a little ill for about the past month or so, nothing serious, but just battling an infection, and so I may have to clear my throat or drink water a little bit more often than usual, so I apologize in advance for that. But yeah, I was asked to address the concept, the issue of equity with you this morning, and equity is a subject about which I have spoken, and it's a goal on which I've worked in various ways throughout really my entire adult life. First as a lawyer, and then when I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore because I hated it, I then spent the last 30 years doing a lot of public speaking and training, organizational development training, workshops, seminars, what have you, in the DEI field, diversity, equity, and inclusion field. And it's a subject that's close to my heart, and so it is really a pleasure to be here addressing that particular subject with you this morning. But before we begin, I'd like to discuss the distinction between equity and equality, because I think oftentimes they are confused, and they are a little confusing. So now, what is the difference between the two, between equity and equality? Well, equity is a quality. It's the quality of being fair, the quality of being impartial. Policies can be equitable, they can be fair, they can be impartial, or not. Procedures can be equitable, fair, and impartial, or not. The referee or the person who calls a game can be equitable, or not. Equity is a state of being fair, impartial, and just. Equality, by contrast, is the result of equity. Equality is what normally follows from equity. Specifically, equality is the state, the reality of being equal, and as the Oxford Language Dictionary states, it is the state of being equal, especially in status, in opportunity, and in rights. The state of being equal in status and opportunity and in rights. So in my remarks this morning, in addition to focusing on equity, I'll also be focusing on equality, because it's equality, the result of equity, which I believe most of us are most interested. Now, for reasons that we lack the time to discuss this morning, I very strongly believe that the goal of being a society in which equality exists in status, in rights, and in opportunity is as crucial today to our American society, to the world, and indeed to the future of our species as it ever has been. But what does such equality look like? Equality in status, in rights, and opportunity. Well, I'd like to suggest that the equality of status denotes an impartiality in how we view, how we see each other. Essentially, it's an egalitarianism in how we think about and what we believe about each other. It's the unquestioned thought, the deeply held belief that all human beings are indeed equal, that irrespective of all differences, we are all equal in our origin. In other words, that we were all created as equal, sentient beings, and thus that we have equal, i.e. the same inherent worth, the same intrinsic value of every other human being, the nearly 8 billion of us on the planet. Additionally, the first word that appeared in my thesaurus when I looked up the word status was rank, the word rank. So for human beings to be equal in status, in my view, is for there to be no ranking of people in our thoughts and our beliefs, no ranking at all about each other. We view each other. It's for us to think about each other, to believe that we are equal and inherent in our human worth, based in our shared humanity. Regardless of our race, the color of our skin, our sex, our gender, whether or not we are a person of faith, and if so, the specific faith or kind of spirituality we may practice, whether we live in a physical, mental, emotional, intellectual, or learning disability status, irrespective of our immigration status, our sexual or romantic orientation, our gender identity, our gender expression, the economic class into which we were born, the economic class in which we live as an adult, including whether we are housed or unhoused. Notwithstanding any of those differences, our level of education, etc., we see each other as having equal worth and equal value as human beings. That, for me, is what it means for us to have equality of status. Equality of opportunity, I believe, is a kind of uniformity in all people's ability to pursue their personal potential for greatness, their inherent interests and talents and passions. Equality of opportunity depends first upon our having our basic human needs met, our need for food and clean drinking water, shelter and safety, all those things that are on the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Some of you may be familiar with it. It requires receiving valuable life lessons from caring, supportive adults in our formative years. It requires access to education, artistic or technical training, and opportunities for meaningful work through either traditional or entrepreneurial employment. In a society characterized by equality of opportunity, the circumstances of one's birth are never a hindrance to the probability that one may be able to develop their inherent gifts, live their dreams, and make their unique contribution to humanity. Equality of rights is perhaps most familiar to us, and thus the easiest for us to understand. In its common meaning, equality of rights connotes equality of rights under law. It implies laws that both are equal for everyone and that are applied equally to everyone, i.e. equality of law and equality of treatment under the law. Equality of rights is probably most familiar to us because in the United States, it's one of the two goals, to name a few, of the civil rights movement, of both waves of the women's movement, of the LGBTQ movement, the disability rights movement, the labor movement, and others. Their goal, of course, was, the other goal, of course, was to awaken the moral conscience of the nation. Tragically, however, ours is neither a nation nor a world in which there is much equity among human beings. Not equity of status, not equity of opportunity, not equity of rights. Indeed, in society after society around the world, equity and its resulting equality are the exception, sadly, and inequality is the rule. Examples, to name just a few, of our worldwide inequality include the extremes of poverty and wealth that exist between developed and developing nations, the extremes of poverty and wealth that exist within developed and indeed within wealthy nations, the total imbalance between women and men and who does the vast majority of the hardest physical labor around the planet, that would be women, who carry water long distances to their villages and their families, who do backbreaking agricultural field work, while also taking care of all of their family's domestic needs, cooking, cleaning, taking care of children, and of course, giving birth to children. In our world, there's a total lack of equality in geopolitical power as well, the vast majority of which lies in the hands of a small minority of individuals and corporations. Within our own country, despite the significant progress that we've achieved since the middle of the 20th century in making the United States a more level playing field for all people, vast inequality still exists among people, inequality in access to educational opportunity, meaningful employment, and adequate housing and health care. Again, tragically, the inequality in which we live the world over is deeply rooted in our history. But what if our history had been different? Can we even begin to envision what the Western Hemisphere would be today had its indigenous people not been totally subjugated in, and in many cases forcibly and violently removed from their land? What if the European explorers who began arriving on their shores in massive numbers over 500 years ago attempted instead to live in peace and harmony with the indigenous inhabitants of the Americas? What if those explorers had treated them respectfully and tried to learn the wisdom of their spirituality? What kind of equality across the Americas might exist today had that been our history? I dare say that I think for most of us, we cannot in any meaningful way truly picture what the Western Hemisphere, and indeed the world, would be now had that been our history, instead of the massive oppression of indigenous people and the forcible taking of their land that is our actual past. What if women over the last 5,000 years of human history had been full contributors in every society around the world? I don't believe that most of us can even imagine the gender-based equality in which our species would now exist had women and men contributed our thoughts, our talents, our ingenuity and our abilities, our creativity in equal measure. Boy, what if we had both women and men equally contributed in building our contemporary human civilization? I mean, I try to imagine that myself. Maybe I'm, I don't know, prejudiced, or maybe I'm naive, but I think war might be far less common on our planet than it is. How might contemporary human civilization now be different, more racially egalitarian, had the first and all subsequent meetings of Africans and Europeans been on the basis of friendship, mutual esteem, and shared learning? That scenario is so far removed from the reality of our actual history of the enslavement of tens of millions of African people for over 2 centuries throughout all of the Americas that we simply cannot visualize it. Now, we cannot, of course, go back in time and change history. Time travel, as far as we know, is not possible according to any of the laws of physics of the known universe. So our tragic history is gone and cannot be altered. But what can we influence? Right, the future. We can influence the future. As individuals, we can resolve to make our community, or perhaps our country, or even perhaps the world, more egalitarian, more equitable, more equal. Each of us can do something toward that goal. But why should equality of status, of opportunity, of rights, why should that even be a goal? Simply stated, it's because inequality results in tremendous, unavoidable human suffering throughout the world. Tremendous, avoidable human suffering. It results too often in ultimately hunger and starvation, in disease, and in violence, both personal and political. So, I'd like for the next few minutes to share some of my thoughts about what we as people of faith, those of us who are Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, those of us who are members of other spiritual traditions, and those of us who are secular people of conscience. I'd like to consider with you for the next few minutes what we can do to promote equality and thus relieve human suffering in the world. Now, initially, when we think about how we can address inequality, many of us think about several traditional avenues. We think about volunteering at a food pantry or a local homeless shelter or at a hospital. I'll just stop for a second and say that before the pandemic, I volunteered at the Desert Regional Medical Center as both a chaplain, believe it or not. Even though I never went to seminary, they wanted me to be a chaplain. And I also volunteered as a baby cuddler, which was so wonderful. All those little tiny preemies in the NICU, just to hold them, it was just wonderful. Anyway, I digress. We think about volunteering at a food pantry or a homeless shelter or a hospital. We might think about facilitating a book club or a discussion group on self-improvement at a local prison. It might occur to us to send a check to a charity. Maybe we'll serve on the board of a nonprofit organization whose work we admire and want to support. And surely all of those things volunteering, sending financial support to charities, and serving on the boards of nonprofit organizations that are doing good work and ministering to the needs of those who are most in need are all wonderful ways of working to promote equality. Food pantries need the help of dedicated volunteers, as well as the donations of generous patrons. The growing number of our sisters and brothers who are unhoused in so many cities and other locations around our country makes the need for volunteers at shelters that provide temporary and emergency housing undeniable. It's good to support local organizations that help those who rely on our social safety net to meet their most basic needs. Our Well in the Desert, Coachella Valley Rescue Mission, our local Goodwill and Salvation Army, for example, among others. It's good to support organizations that work on other forms of social inequality, be it inequality in the ability to vote, inequality in education, in access to housing, to health care, and inequality to healthy food, and increasingly to clean water, a challenge that sadly plagues a growing number of American communities. Organizations such as the American Civil Liberties Union, the Innocence Project, the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, the NAACP, the Anti-Defamation League, the National Urban League, the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, and so many others. For those of us who are a bit more adventurous, we can take advantage of opportunities to volunteer with national organizations, such as Habitat for Humanity and AmeriCorps. And for those of us who are even more adventurous, there are volunteer opportunities in organizations that do international work on social inequality. Organizations such as Doctors Without Borders and the Peace Corps, which welcomes seniors, by the way. Having not experienced it myself, I don't think I can even begin to imagine the personal satisfaction that one feels in working on the ground in a developing country, relieving the kind of human suffering based in extreme social inequality on which those organizations work. Finally, my friends, we can work on the current growing and, for me, the very frightening trend in our country of what I refer to as inequality of citizenship. Inequality of citizenship. In other words, the inequality of opportunity for targeted groups of American citizens to vote that now exists more than it ever has at any point since the 1950s. There are many ways of doing that. We can work on repairing the extreme gerrymandering of voting districts that has taken place over the last 10 to 20 years. We can work to negate the effects of the dangerous voter suppression activities that quash the vote of untold numbers of Americans of color and young Americans across the country. We can talk to young people about the importance of voting, or it may be as simple as giving a senior citizen a ride to our local polling place on Election Day. We can support organizations that are focused on abolishing the antiquated and anti-democratic Electoral College so that finally everyone's vote is equal no matter what state they live in, and in so doing achieve the true equality represented by the system of one person, one vote. Thank you. I'm glad I'm not the only one that has feelings about that. During every election cycle, we can support candidates whose platforms reflect that social and political equality as priorities. We must vote for such candidates in every election at every level, city, county, state, and national, by knocking on doors, making phone calls, sending texts, and doing postcarding. And finally, of course, we can run for public office. If we feel strongly about addressing the issue of inequality and feel that as an individual we can make a difference, a real difference, we can run for office and try to replace those who use their public trust, the public trust of their fellow citizens in public office, who try to affirmatively advance inequality, or who may be just not caring about inequality. All of those are valuable and very necessary, very important ways of working to bring more equality to our world on the local, the national, and the international levels. It is what we as people of conscience and integrity are called to do, what we as an intentional community is called to do. Not doing so results in the continuation of an enormous amount of human suffering. Of those who have much, much is expected. It is our sacred duty. It is our responsibility, both as individuals and as a community of conscience, to do our part to bring about more equity into the world. It is the moral thing to do, the kind of morality that results in justice and the kind of justice that ultimately results in peace. My final thought this morning, my friends, is that working to bring more equality into the world is, in the final analysis, sourced in compassion. It's founded in love, the kind of love that, as the definition of agape love provides, shows empathy, wants the best, expects and extends help, and demonstrates good intentions for everyone, no exceptions. Equity is indeed the key ingredients of morality, justice, compassion, and peace. We can all do something, at least one thing, at the local, national, and international level to bring more sorely needed equality into our world. I challenge you, my friends, to think about what you can do, and then to go out into the world and, in whatever action you can make, large or small, to be an equity ambassador in our world. The world needs you. The world needs all of us. Thank you.
As always, Lauren gives us a lot to think about. For our closing hymn, please stay seated. If you're so inclined, reach out, grab the hand of somebody sitting next to you, and Roger Beeman will lead us in Lean on Me. Bear with me. We have several announcements here, two from the very lovely Randy Steele. If anyone needs a new blue name badge, just let him know. These badges have a way of disappearing, then miraculously reappearing. If yours has gone astray, please see him. Also, he will be on the patio after the service for Sacred Stone orders. They're $250 each and is a fundraiser for Sacred Grounds. Order them to celebrate something special in your life or in memoriam. And from Social Justice, please join your UCOD friends and distribute food baskets to those in need in the East Valley. On Wednesday, March 27th, please note the date change. We will carpool to Galilee Center in Mecca, arriving around 2:40. The distribution is 3 o'clock to 4:15. We will put food boxes in the trunks of cars in a fast-paced assembly line fashion. You must be able to lift up to 5 pounds. Expect to have fun. Please contact Denise Jansen-Eager for more information. Her information is in the directory. And now if Stephen will please come up and we will extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Well, I must say that because I was in the scripted screen to stage performance last night, I forgot to prepare closing words. So I'll have to just speak from the heart. And my heart is telling me to say to each and every one of you this morning, number one, it was a delight to be here again with you. And to really sort of take to heart, if you will, and think about what you may be able to do to bring more equity into the world. No contribution is too small. No contribution is insignificant. You never know the way in which you may touch the life or the heart of another person. I know in the work that I've done over the years, literally years after I've done a workshop or given a keynote address, I've heard from someone, you know, that message you gave really stuck with me and it changed my life. You just never know what you can do to bring some level of comfort to one who is less fortunate, or on a more collective level to bring more equity into our society and into the world at large. So I just ask all of you to think about what you might be able to do. There are so many wonderful volunteer opportunities that are available here in our Coachella Valley. And to just go out there, empower yourself. And I know many of you are already doing this, many of you I know. And to just do it and or do more of it. Thank you.